All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. And I see we've got people from all over Australia and Denver. I'm just really thrilled to welcome everyone to tonight's event. I'm Kristen Soper. I'm the events coordinator at Lawrence Public Library. I just have a few housekeeping items to mention. There is a chat bar that a lot of you are taking advantage of on the right side, so you can chat with folks on the right side during the presentation. If you do have a question, there is a ask a question little button down at the bottom of your screen towards the middle. If you would use that to ask a question, that way it'll really come to my attention. It might get lost in the chat. So use that if you want to ask a question. Also, we are recording tonight, and the recording will be available on our Crowdcast channel. So if you want to review it or send it to your friends to watch, you can do that. And please, if you are able to buy the book, go ahead and buy the book from the Reveling store. There is a little link, that big green button right there. If you click on that, that'll take you to the Raven, and you can buy directly from them. And of course, it is available at Lawrence Public Library to check out. And I will put those links up in the chat once we get started. And also, if you want a signed book, William will sign book plates. So please email me. I'll throw my email up if you would like a book plate, and we'll get one mailed out to you. So email me right there and make sure that we can have sort of a signing situation while we do all these virtual events. I want to thank the Raven for partnering with us on the event, as well as the American Library Association, the Northeast Kansas Library Association, and everyone who helped get the word out. And some folks have already done it, but we'd love to know where you're from. I'm sure we've got folks that are are outside of Kansas. So please drop in your location, and if you're a librarian, let us know that, because we want to know. We want to know our librarian community too. To see our full slate of upcoming events and also how you can use Lawrence Public Library during the pandemic, check out our website at lplks.org. And also, don't forget to fill out your census and register to vote. I will throw those links up too. We have information on our website on all of that. So that's very important to do. And all of these deadlines are pending. So yeah, register to vote and fill out your census. And now, to get started, I want to introduce Lynn and William tonight. Lynn Lewis is the person who guided William in his early librarian years. She is a former Lawrence Public Library Adult Services librarian. She worked for years at LPL teaching computer classes, making sure the reference desk was staffed, and she kept our adult fiction and nonfiction collections beautiful and up to date. Currently is a branch manager at the Skillman Southwestern Branch Library in the Dallas Public Library System. William Ottens is Lawrence Public Library's Cataloging and Collection Development Coordinator. He is also the creator of the library-centric Tumblr and Twitter presence called Librarian Problems. If you haven't already, be sure to give him a follow at Librarian PRBLNS on Twitter for the gift-based schooling in how to work in a public library. He's worked in reference, administration, cataloging, and collection development. Librarian Tales is his first book, and it gives you great insight into all of the work librarians, especially librarians in public libraries, do to enrich and serve their communities. I have had the pleasure of working with William for the last 10 years, minus the short stint where he moved to Iowa, and he has always been a quiet and grounded leader in our organization. His dedication to libraries can be seen through shepherding our collections the best to serve our community, and serving on state and national committees like the Kansas Library Association's Publicity Committee and the Stonewall Book Awards Committee for the American Library Association's Rainbow Roundtable. His commitment to the field of librarianship on both a local and national level is truly inspiring, and I'm so happy to call him a friend and colleague. Please welcome Lynn Lewis and William Ottens.
Hi, William. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, good. How are things in Lawrence, Kansas today?
I think, the weather's pretty nice. Had a good dinner at the Lawrence Beer Company, had a good burger and some good drinks. How are you?
I'm doing good. I miss Lawrence, but I love Dallas. And of course, I think it's probably about 89 degrees right now, even though, it's almost 7:30 at night. So, all right. Well, I'm so happy to be able to interview you tonight about your book. And so I have some questions I'd like to ask. Are you ready to get started?
Wait, let me, I've got some props here that I'd like to put on. Make myself feel like a librarian there. Kind of go with my book cover.
Yes, I love that hat. Whenever you are ready, we'll get started.
Oh, go ahead. I can multitask.
Okay. Okay.
Either that.
Okay. So you wrote about this in your book, but could you tell us a little bit about why you wanted to work in libraries and how your career path got started?
Okay, it goes all the way back to high school, and I kind of write about that in the book. Just major props to my high school librarian, Miss Bame. She started a book club that I had to join because I just fell in love with reading and books at that point, and just being around people who loved books, and then being able to talk about them and geek out about them was fantastic, and make recommendations. And there was one book that we read in particularly that just really instigated my desire to become a librarian. And it's called Where the Heart Is by Billy Letts. And the main character, Novalee Nation, falls in love with the librarian from the town, Forney Hall. And that just character, just the way it was described, made me just want to be a librarian because I could picture myself in, this beautiful building with stacks and beautiful ornate trim and chandeliers shuffling around eccentrically, spouting off facts and helping people find books that they wanted to read or the information that they needed. I really liked that. And then when I got to college, I actually considered becoming a teacher because I, again, liked sharing knowledge and stuff. But once I got into the program, I figured out that it wasn't quite what I really wanted. And so it was at that time that I decided I wanted to be a librarian and kind of started looking into what it would take to get a job after college. And then I learned, you might have to have a master's degree to be a librarian. So I started investigating library schools and what it would take to get into library school. And from there, I finished college. I got a job at a high school anyway as a paraeducator, but I would commute from Lawrence, or from my hometown to Lawrence, and every day I would drive past the Lawrence Public Library because early in that point, I thought, that really to me is where people come because they want to learn and not because they're required to by the government. And that's kind of like, I like working with students or people who are passionate about learning or about reading or just sharing knowledge, and the public library is kind of that place for me. And so I kind of worked toward that.
And you were successful in that, getting a
Yes.
job at the Lawrence Public Library. Okay. Okay, well, that's great. Can you tell me who are some of your favorite librarians, fictional or in real life?
Well, I have to say, you. One of them, just because you kind of launched my career, so I really appreciate that. I mentioned Forney Hall from Where the Heart Is, just because, as a 15-year-old reading books and seeing somebody in a position that maybe necessarily I hadn't at that point, someone bookish and interested and learning and teaching. I didn't really have that in my elementary or junior high. There were a few male teachers, but I could never see myself in a role until I read that book, and it kind of just sparked, an awareness in me. Like, this is something I can do. This is something I cannot, don't have to be embarrassed about, reading and being bookish and having an interest in, expanding my mind in that way. So that Forney Hall, will always stick out to me. But there's always, other, fictional librarians. Miss Hushbaum comes to mind from all the loud librarian who was constantly shushing people. And I just laugh at it just because of how hilarious and over the top it was. And then one of the TV shows that I loved and liked was The Librarians, not the American kind of adventure one, but there was an Australian TV show called The Librarians, and Frances, I think, was the head librarian, and she's a terrible librarian, and I don't recommend being like her at all. But it was just the situations that they presented in that TV show were so real to what I felt like when I was watching it, the experiences that I had in a library.
Okay. Where did you get the idea for the Librarian Problems blog?
Okay. I started working at the reference desk at the Lawrence Public Library back in 2009 and 2010, and just learning about the job. And there was one specific incident where a patron just kind of shuffled up to the desk and, braced herself on the desk and said, "Where are the books?" And it kind of shocked me because I was sitting at the reference desk and there was books to the right and books to the left. And she went on and said, the ones on DVD that you can play in your car. I was like, and my very technical brain was like, we don't have books on DVD. We have books on CD. But I knew what she was talking about, and I was able to help her find what she was actually looking for, which were audiobooks on CD. And it just made me kind of laugh and wonder, are there other people, who experience things like this, reference questions that are kind of like puzzles where you have to put the pieces together before you can eventually, help and figure out what this person is looking for.
Right.
And so, I had been on Tumblr a little bit, and I'd been looking at different blogs, and I kind of got inspired by these reaction GIF or GIF, however you prefer to pronounce it, blogs. And I thought, there's nothing really right now on Tumblr for librarians or, of this type, like a reaction GIF blog for librarians. So I just, played around with a few animated GIFs and situations. And after a couple of weeks, it kind of, gained a little bit of attention. I had a few followers, but after a couple of months, it, kind of started blowing up, and I started gaining more and more followers. And I just kept up with it, coming up with situations that I was encountering at the desk. And then eventually people started submitting their own ideas to the blog.
Yeah.
So I started sharing those as well.
What inspired you to write a book about your experiences in the public library?
Well, since I started Librarian Problems, the blog, I'd always, toyed around with, writing a book about my experiences. But I could never really get from, a reaction GIF blog. How do I turn these animated images into a book? And then I think it was last year, Julie from Skywars Publishing reached out to me through maybe, I think it was a tweet that she saw or a post on the actual Tumblr, and asked if I would be interested in writing a book with inspirational content for librarians. And at first I was like, well, inspiration is kind of not the aim that I had with librarian problems, other than posting stuff that I felt like other librarians could relate to. So I said, sure, I'll do it. And it kind of took a while for me to kind of piece the book together and decide exactly what I wanted to put in it. And I aimed quite a bit for just, trying to tell my personal library journey. A lot of my own experiences, just starting from that very beginning of, how I got interested in a librarian, to the different experiences I've had working at the reference desk, working the circulation desk, working as a director, and just kind of threw it in with a lot of the comments and stories that people have shared through Tumblr, through Facebook, and through Twitter, and kind of pieced together from that.
Would you like to read us maybe a little bit about at the beginning of the book, just so people have an idea? I've read this book twice. It's excellent. If you have anything to do with a library at all as a librarian, it is hilarious.
Okay, so I'll just start with the introduction, because I think, that's kind of my whole explanation is, where the book came from. And I kind of talked a little bit about it, but I'll start there.
Okay.
So you can tell some of my inspiration from, pop culture, where I get things like the very first couple of words, picture it. Sophia from the Golden Girls, picture it.
Yes.
A reference desk situated in the center of the library, surrounded by stacks of books. I'm doing my normal librarian thing when a patron shuffles up and braces herself by placing both hands on the desktop, and she takes a breath. Where are the books, she says. I blink. She continues, the ones on DVD that you can play in your car. She tilts her head as I furrow my brow and process her question in my overly technical head. Books on DVD that you play in your car? Then it hits me. Oh, library or audiobooks on CD. I try not to laugh as I lead her to what she wants. As a recently hired reference assistant at the Lawrence Public Library, I quickly learned that interactions at the desk, what librarians typically call reference interviews, are like putting together puzzles. Sometimes not all the pieces are there. Other times you completely misinterpret the situation. At another library, at another reference desk, a young boy approaches and announces, I'm looking for adventures. How adorable, I think to myself. Do you have adventures? The kid continues. Of course, we have many adventures, I respond. What kind of adventures are you looking for? No, the kid says, Avengers. You have the Avengers. I smack my forehead. Simple, silly moments like these convinced me that there would never be a dull day working at the library. Contrary to popular belief, a librarian's job isn't always the quiet, easy, and stress-free paradise some movies, TV shows, and commercials portray it to be. We have our moments too. And that's partly because we work with the public. And anyone who works with the public should know things can get weird. Unhappy patron contesting a 15-cent fine. Picture books with their corners gnawed off. Unattended toddlers ransacking the shelves. Dead bird in the book drop. All in a day's work.
So See, it's so. I mean, I started reading that, and I was like, I just want to keep reading it. So very good. Can you tell us about the process that you went through in writing the book? You talked a little bit about it just now, but I mean, how did you stay focused and keep going and try to find different things to write about?
Well, I had a partner who kept shoving me every time I'd pick up my phone or turn on the TV, who said, shouldn't you be working on your book? That was really helpful. But, I kind of jumped around a lot, just writing the stories and trying to write down whatever came to me memory-wise. And I think the part that I kind of sat down and wrote, like, beginning to end, was probably the part 3, where I talk about being a director of the small library, just because it was a very fun experience for me. It was something that, as a 27-year-old at that time, who maybe had 3 or 4 years of library experience in his belt, didn't really expect to get a position like that, but it was kind of thrown into a position where I was leading 12 staff members, but half of them had been working at the library longer than I'd been alive. So it was just an experience that still stands out to me. And I loved just kind of reminiscing, and now it's been 5 years since I was in that position, just about, the things that I really loved about the position, the things that really challenged me about the position, and the things that, I might want to go back someday, or if I could, and redo. But that was kind of, just thinking about the entire, the book and the process there is like, what, moments in my library career so far have stood out to me, and just kind of writing down those moments and then piecing it together in the book that I have.
What parts do you think you enjoyed writing the most?
Well, like I said, the library director chapters were kind of my favorites that kind of stood out to me. I had a really great staff there. I tear up sometimes because I just had a really good time, and they're very supportive, and the community was very supportive. I had a lot of fun with them. But also just writing about the different departments that I have had experience and, circulation and reference and tech support, just a lot of positive memories, as well as, silly memories and sometimes frustrating memories. But it all came together. So to answer your question, I think, writing about the library director years of my life, even though they were, just 3 years, it was a great time.
Well, and I just want to say, I'll never forget the day as your supervisor at the time when you were going to go to Oskaloosa, Iowa. Remember, you said, I need some time off to go to Oskaloosa. And I was like, why? Because there's Oskaloosa, Kansas, right? And you're like, it's in Iowa. And I was like, oh, but I'm so glad that experience happened for you. And at the time, it was just like, are you kidding? William's going away? But look, you came back. So that worked out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything that you wish you would have put in the book that you didn't? Anything that you wanted to, but maybe you couldn't?
Yeah, there was, as I wrote it and I submitted it, there were things that the editors did ask me to go ahead and leave out, just because we do want to always have a positive representation, I think, of not only librarianship, but, the people who use libraries as well. And I agree, in some of the parts that I did write about that actually did happen in the library. If someone, were to pick up the book and, think, oh, he's so critical about librarians, or, the situation maybe, you shouldn't have written about. And yeah, sometimes, I think something is funny and it's not funny. And so, the editors really helped me kind of to leave those situations out because they weren't necessarily, or, edit them and clean them up. Just about, this one time I was at Oskaloosa, and it was approaching the holidays. It was like the last day before Christmas break, and the cataloger who was working the reference desk came to my office and said, somebody just said they left a mess in the bathroom, and our facilities manager had left already for the day, and I wasn't about to make any of my library assistants go in there and see what the mess was and clean it up. So I grabbed a mop and a bucket and a mask and cleaned up this mess. And it just gave me a better appreciation, I think, for the work that, library facilities managers or, any janitorial work they do on a daily basis, just to make sure libraries are clean, sanitary spaces for the patrons and the librarians to use. But when I sat down to write it, I included a lot of detail that, wasn't necessary. I was grateful that, the editors at both Skyhorse and ALA Editions helped me kind of clean that up.
I think that on the job descriptions that we write a lot for these jobs, and the ones that it says other duties as assigned, right? So this is the other duties as assigned. Whatever needs to be done whenever, right, William?
Yes.
Okay, so you and I have been talking a lot about this, and I have some suggestions of things that I've found in the book drop, but what's the strangest thing that you've ever found in the book drop?
Well, I never worked in circulation officially, and I never checked the book drop all that often. I got to cover the circulation desk in Oskaloosa quite frequently, and I think the most unusual thing that I personally found was just the cedar filling for our landscaping, which is not very exciting thing to find in the book drop. But I'm pretty sure one of our cataloging, our library assistants in Oskaloosa did find the dead bird crushed underneath the books in the book drop. So that was probably, at least at the library, that I currently had worked, the most, weirdest, most disgusting thing to find in a book drop. And then one of my coworkers at Lawrence said that one time she had pulled a book that someone had decided to use a piece of bacon for a bookmark.
Yeah.
Which bacon does not make for good bookmarks.
And you have to wonder, were they looking for it later on? Like, what happened to my piece of bacon? Oh, wait, it's in my book, So, and the question is, was it cooked or uncooked?
I know. And then the one that I included in the book that I thought was the most hilarious was someone who commented when I had asked on Facebook, what was the strangest thing you found in the book drop. Someone said that a parent had the police called on them when they were shoving stuff in the book drop because they thought they were shoving dead animals into the book drop, but it was just puppets that they had borrowed from the library.
Oh, that is hilarious. What do you hope that readers of this book, what do you hope that they'll gain from it as they're reading it and seeing, your memoir?
Well, I think for people who, love libraries, but, aren't working in libraries, I hope they gain a better understanding of what librarians do. I think a common misconception that a lot of librarians get or hear is that we sit and read books or just shelf books all day, and that it's a quiet, stress-free, and easy job, when in actuality, we work with the public, and anyone who works with the public can understand that things get weird, and I hope new or aspiring librarians who pick up this book too can have a better sense, as they're going into this career as to, what they're going to get into. I had some preconceived notions that I wrote about in it, that I, because I got that on the desk experience, kind of was able to dispel pretty easily, like the idea that I had to memorize and know, all the details of all the information in the books behind the reference desk. That was one thing that terrified me. Is like, I'm never going to know every single volume on this shelf, and I'm never going to be able to just turn around and say, oh, that information is right here, when that's not necessarily the expectation, especially on day one. And I think patrons too will understand if you have to dig a little bit to find the resources or the answer. Of course, there are patrons who have the expectation that you're just going to have it right off the top of your head too. But for the most part, the public is very understanding that, you're doing the best you can. You're going to try to find the resources to help them as you do.
I remember, you probably don't remember this, but it was probably like your second or third day, and you were working with me at the desk. And do you remember that book we had in Ready Reference that had like those celebrity addresses in it? And yes. I remember, we could have looked it up on the internet or whatever, but like we had this book, and people would ask us for stuff to write, like fan mail and stuff. And I remember I looked something up for somebody, and you were just like, how'd you know that?
Yeah.
We didn't have to know everything. It was just like there, but I just remember your face like, what?
And what I didn't realize, it took time and practice and just taking, the whatever moments you have to kind of familiarize yourself with the resources that are surrounding you. And, that's what piqued my interest in libraries, is just, that idea that I can be surrounded by books, yes, be surrounded by a lot of information and have such close access to knowledge and experience, and also be able to share that with people.
Mm-hmm. So I know that you have done some other writing and things like that, some poetry, but are you thinking of publishing another book after this one?
Well, I've again, since I was 15 years old, dreamed about, writing and publishing a book. I ordered for the young adult collection for the library. So the last couple of years I've been toying with putting together a young adult novel. I've got several starts that I could see myself going with. But again, it's going to take that dedication and push. And I think now that my first book is out there, I think I have a little bit more of a push to start, working more dedicated on something else. So definitely, yeah.
Well, I just have to ask, I saw on your Facebook post this morning, you're like, this finally happened after all these years. Like, do you feel any different now that you have a book out there that people can buy?
Definitely more excited, a little nervous, a little, now that these tales are out there in the world, I'm just excited, I think, to have been able to share my story. And I hope it inspires other people to kind of tell their own experiences. I think every time I posted about this on the Librarian Problems Facebook page, or I told, my coworkers or friends, they say, oh, I could write, or, I've always wanted to write, or I was always thought about writing a book about, the crazy things that happen in a library. And I was just given the opportunity, I think, through Librarian Problems and with the publisher to tell this story. But I know that I'm not the only librarians who, I don't even think, my perspective is like most important or important when it's everybody's stories that are important. So I hope this also inspires, other people to tell their own experiences and stories, whether that be through a book or whether it's through art or through a new Twitter feed or a new Tumblr page.
Okay. Well, that's what I had for interview questions. So I don't know if we're ready to take some questions from our audience.
Yeah, we've got some questions.
Okay.
So what is the toughest part of the job?
I think, ask me that, like pre-pandemic, and I would have said, like in my current position, just telling people that right now I order books for the collection and I get all these great suggestions for the collection. And when it's something that either the library can't afford or the library, can't get because it's out of print or really hard to find, that's kind of, I feel like I'm disappointing the person who's asking for that. So, but then I'm always able to redirect them to a resource that might be able to get that book or that movie or that CD for them through interlibrary loan. So just, that's tough telling somebody, no, we can't get that for the collection, but we might be able to get it through interlibrary loan. And then, it's even worse when we can't get it through interlibrary loan. But I've never had anyone like completely devastated or upset. So that's helpful. And then post-pandemic, right now, I work the front door, and I really sympathize with anybody who's working in a library right now who has to deal with people who demand to come in without wearing a mask, or have to, remind people, hey, we want to protect the people here in the building and we want to protect our patrons. The simplest thing we can do to do that right now is to wear a mask or to pull that mask up over your nose. And, I'm not always, one to confront people. And I've had to, kind of build that up in myself too. And I know patron or staff who are on the front lines more than I am now, have to deal with this more consistently. So that's a tough part right now.
It really is. And I think that you really realize here in Dallas, the libraries are not open to the public. So we're just offering curbside at some locations, and some locations are starting up to offer that. But the saddest thing is when people call and they think they were there when we answer the phone, that they can come and use a computer, and they can't. And I've actually had people get really not mad, more than sad. Like they count on the libraries to be able to carry on their daily lives. And and children with internet now, especially with the kids going virtual and stuff, it's really hard to take those phone calls, and you just feel really bad for them.
All right. What advice do you have for someone thinking of becoming a librarian right
now? If they're not 100% sure, they want to invest in the library degree. There are positions in libraries that don't require that master's degree, and that's a good way to, get an idea of what it is like to work in a library. When I was starting out, I tried everything to get my foot in the door. I tried, offering myself to volunteer. I tried, I went ahead and went for my master's degree, and that kind of got my foot in the door, which you'll read about in the book. But just kind of being persistent if that is something you really want to go for. I think, volunteering, just visiting the libraries that you're interested in working for, just kind of understanding, the staff and the work culture there as best as you can. That I think was the way that, worked for me.
And then a question from Nate that's kind of along the same lines. What communities exist online for librarians to connect and share knowledge and questions? hashtag websites?
I think on Twitter, there's the hashtag library Twitter. Lots of things going on there constantly. Lots of ideas, lots of frustrations. I think when COVID came out, there was the hashtag close the libraries and hashtag protect library workers. So a lot of solidarity there. Over on Facebook, there's the library think tank, which there's lots of ideas thrown out there, and there's lots of conversation there, lots of ideas to lots of discussions that can be questionable at times. So I think I gravitate more towards Twitter for my library community. But any social media platform, you're going to find your librarians. We're librarians on Tumblr, which were the ones that kind of built my platform there. So I will always be appreciative of that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So this one's from Brian. He says, your humor is especially appreciated by librarians, but accessible to non-librarians as well. How do you do such a good job of reveling in librarian stereotypes without reinforcing them in a counterproductive way?
That is a really good question. I'm always worried when I post something that does put, librarians, that kind of, I post a GIF about cardigans, which I think is a relatively innocuous stereotype about librarians. I know a lot of librarians who love their cardigans, and I know some librarians who don't love their cardigans. And I just try to, be funny about it. And I don't know if I've, avoided like aggressively, disproving, the negative stereotypes through librarian problems. But again, I try not to, perpetuate it through a certain GIF or, and my goal is to make people laugh, not to make people angry. And so if I'm making people angry, which I have, with a couple of the posts, I've, offended people, and I walk that back and I say, I'm sorry, this wasn't my intention, but I understand, how I've offended you with this representation of this situation or this librarian or stereotype. So I kind of through, the almost 8 years that I've run the blog, kind of learned, what topics, do make people laugh and which ones are kind of like dead wood or which do make people pretty angry. When I had posted, in my early days and was learning again, I posted some stuff that I wasn't really proud of that, necessarily didn't go viral for the wrong reasons, but did hit a nerve with some people. And I learned, hey, maybe that's not the way that I need to think about librarianship, or I need to think about this situation, and I need to apologize for this, and I need to fix what I did here.
All right, thank you. There's one we kind of already talked about this, but can you tell us a story? This is from Patty Collins. Can you tell us a story that the editor said was too bizarre or out there to share, that you're willing to share at your book launch?
Well, I won't get into very, very specific details, but it just was on a topic that, even I was hesitant to share because, again, it was crossing that line, but it's something that does unfortunately happen in libraries. We had a situation that involved bodily fluid in our computer labs that kind of someone would leave the fluid after doing something that you probably don't want to think about them doing at the computers. And it took a little bit for us to watch the security cams to figure out, who's doing this. It's not appropriate for, the library. And, it kind of was leading into a discussion about, censorship and, whether people should be doing certain things on our computers at the library, free access of information at libraries, And I felt, I'm not quite at, the level that I feel comfortable writing about this. But I did, and I included it. But then the editor was like, this isn't quite, there. So I was happy to go ahead and kind of take that out. But it is something that happened in the library that, is worth some people discussing, I feel like. But I felt like maybe my book wasn't quite right for it.
So there's a couple questions about what you like to read. And so one talks about your bookshelf.
Oh.
Books you like to purchase. And then there's a question about who is your favorite author. So do you want to talk maybe a little bit about like books you love, authors you love?
Okay. So I do read quite a bit of young adult fiction. I order for the YA collection at the library. I'll just, right now I'm reading the Summer of Everything by Julian Winters, kind of a cute novel that's inspired by Empire Records, except in this book they're trying to save a little independent bookstore, which I love independent bookstores. Yay, the Raven. I read kind of all over the place, even in YA. You'll see the disasters behind me on the bookshelf, and that was kind of a space odyssey. Oh, there's my cat, Baxter. Say hi, Baxter. And some adventure there. Black Flamingo was the ALA Stonewall winner for children and young adult, and I was really fortunate to participate on that committee and get to select that title. A beautiful novel in verse about the Black queer experience that I just was really appreciative that we were able to highlight like that.
Great. So this is more of a writing question, but what advice do you have? I'm sure like right now is probably a very difficult time to write, maybe with COVID and all of the, world being what it is. Like how do you work through, sounds like burnout, and what would your advice be to writers dealing with burnout?
It's okay to take a step back and, realize, hey, I don't have the energy or the emotional capacity to write this stuff down or to commit to this right now, and just take that break however long it's going to be. My favorite quote during COVID was from Miranda Hart. She's a British comedian, and she had a sitcom called Miranda. And on her Instagram feed, the things she said was, the most important thing in this time is just surviving the day, just making it through this time. So prioritizing yourself is perfectly okay over your writing, over your reading, or whatever you're trying to accomplish. And then if you can get through it, for me, it's small steps. This book was a small step process. I thought of things, I wrote them down and tried to get them out. And then there were weeks where I was like, I can't focus on this. I've got to do something else. And then I was also distracted by, social media and TV and stuff too. But, it's not, looking at it as this huge project and trying to accomplish it all at once. It's just breaking it down for me into the small steps. It's kind of like that with reading. March, April, even into May, I was not reading. And then eventually I just picked up my book and read what I could, put it down and said, I've accomplished this. I'm proud of, the paragraph. I'm proud of the page that I was able to commit to in this time, because we're in such a, weird time, that it's hard to concentrate on things. But I think, like Miranda said, the most important thing is getting through.
Oh, it looks like we have one more. How long did it take you to write the book?
I'm pretty sure I was contacted in about March or April of 2019, and I did finish and submit the first draft in March of 2020. And after a couple of rounds of edits, I got the opportunity to slip in an extra chapter there at the end, because of the way signatures and books are printed. So if you get to the last chapter, you'll learn all about that.
Okay, well, there's no more questions. Well, I guess I have a question real quick. Like, what did you learn about yourself writing this book? Because it is a memoir, of your career.
That it's a challenge to write, and I need to learn. I guess that I really learned that I could do it. I could write it, and I dreamt about writing a book since I was like 15 years old, and it did take 20 years, but I was able to accomplish it. And so I feel like if I can do this, I can write my young adult novels, and I can, if I put my mind to it, I can do it.
Okay, well, does anyone have any other questions for William or Lynn? Okay. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Thank you, William. Thank you, Lynn. And yeah, please buy the book at the Raven if you can. I've put my email up in the chat if you'd like a book plate. And yeah, thank you all so much for coming out.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.